I'm Andrew Coates. I'm the host of the Live Free and Diet Hard podcast. I feel rusty here. I haven't done one of these in a few weeks. Life's been busy, but it is episode 313. Welcome and welcome a really cool guest. I've actually been excited. We've been planning this one for a while. Victoria Powell. You're an LA-based trainer, and you got on my radar because I'm a huge fan of the band Tool. Massive fan. Like, it's all over my social media. I love them. I have tons of the shirts. I'm wearing one now. I don't air the videos of these things. And Adam Jones, the guitarist, shared you in his story as his trainer. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I have to follow you. Same thing happened with Sean Madden, who I recently had on the podcast, because Maynard works with him for Muay Thai stuff. And Maynard is huge into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and loves martial arts. So I actually connected with Sean. And of course, we connected as well, learn more about you. You've been doing this a really long time. I think it's what, 16 years now? Yeah.
Well, going on at 19, actually.
Going on 19, you got to update your website.
I know.
I got the same problem. And anyway, you've had an incredible amount of longevity and success in an interesting city like LA. So it's a real pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been really excited to chat with you. I love the information that you put out there. You're honest, and you talk about aspects of fitness that a lot of other people don't really talk about. So I'm really happy to be here.
Well, let's share you and all your wisdom and experience with my audience, which is mostly coaches. There's some enthusiasts in here. So I mentioned that you're an ally, right? And you've worked with a number of high profile clients. Now, there's some nuance to this, so I'm going to let you go with that. But obviously, Adam has shared you publicly. Jared Leto is on your website. There are some other people. And I know that there's a lot of people in the industry who work with celebrity clients. And on one hand, we shouldn't treat them as different than any other client, right? They're
Absolutely not. It's a job, right? So
they probably think that, like, I think a lot of trainers think that, oh, you get to work with a famous celebrity and it's a road to success. Or, for example, we've got Ben Bruno, who works with Justin Timberlake and a lot of other well-known celebrities. Probably not been a great week for that. You've got my friend Don Saladino, who works with Ryan Reynolds, started with Hugh Jackman. And but a lot of people sometimes don't realize that a lot of the reason why they get to work with these celebrities is because they have such a demonstrated track record of success, deep relationships, are very, very skilled. So is there anything about the experience of training celebrities that you've loved, things that maybe trainers should understand that it's not the like pathway to fame and money that they think it is?
yeah, no, I mean, being an actor or a musician is another job. I mean, that's the way I approach every client. It's, we are people, we need the same things to reach our fitness goals and our, increase our longevity. While there is, some benefit to training some high profile people, it might give you a little more clout. But if you're not skilled at your job, that's not really going to matter. So there are some disadvantages. Sometimes I've been lucky with some of the celebrities that I've worked with, that they've been really down to earth and respected my time and my craft. But I've had some situations where it's been very difficult. There's some ego and and I'm not a person that can lie, and I don't want to work with someone that isn't really focused and motivated to work with me. So I have let celebrities go because they didn't respect my time and they expected me to treat them in a different way than I would treat somebody else.
I've got a friend who's worked with some of the biggest names in celebrity anything, and it's not Don or anybody I've just named, and he said, we were talking in person, he said that it's all about them, right? It's
Oh yeah,
often
it can be. Yeah.
their schedule, their time, depending on the nature of everything. And I don't know if that necessarily coexists really well with working with a lot of everyday people as well, if you have to drop everything and go take care of one celebrity client.
Yeah, I mean that's the issue that I was speaking of. And I won't stand for that. Like, I value my clients' time regardless of what they do for a living, and I expect that same respect, for my time to be valued. And yeah, but it's definitely an issue when working with some high profile celebrities.
I suppose here's the flip side. there's also an issue with regular fucking people, right?
Yeah.
Like I have worked with clients who have been big, very successful financially, very, very set, lot doing really cool stuff. And they're very down to earth and they understand time boundaries because they have them in their own worlds. They're not entitled and they're amazing to work with. Right. We have a great relationship and I enjoy working with them. And I've had people who I'm just like, holy shit. Like, I'm not even going to take you on as a client with some of the weird stuff that they've said or some of the energy. Or very quickly you realize that it's just not a good fit. And sometimes it's not just not a good fit. You don't click on a personal level. I mean, I've been doing this 13 and a half years. I've had 3 clients become verbally abusive.
Oh, wow.
Nuts to me, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the end of the relationship right there. That's crossing a line that's a no-go. And these are not celebrities. So as much as like I think we fixate on maybe like some of the high profile celebrity trainers and clients in the industry, and a lot of time like it's really sweet and wonderful. We talked off air about Jeanette Jenkins and how Jeanette Jenkins trains Pink,
Hmm.
and Pink makes a big show of like how important Jeanette is, and Jeanette obviously. I think here's the thing: some celebrities, some of my friends, they train celebrities, they don't talk about it. It's like mum's a word. Sometimes it's contractual. They can't say shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some so right, and you deal with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Some celebrities, they actually openly encourage and promote and share, like Ryan Reynolds always shares Dawn,
Mm.
always. Ben Bruno's clients always share him.
Yeah. Yeah. My clients have been very, most of my celebrity clients have been very, private. And, I don't want to be respected in my industry because of, you know, because of trading celebrities. I want to be respected for the information that I put out there and, the work that I do. So, my values are, I have really high values. So I don't really share too much about that. But yeah, I mean, I've worked with some really big people in the world. I've worked with a prince in the Middle East for 2 years. I lived out in the Middle East, which I can't disclose which country, but yeah, and some really big names. And I've been really lucky with some of the celebrities that I have worked with. Have been super sweet, down to earth. But I've had a few where I've had to completely just get them out of my life because it was just not worth my time at the end of the day.
And I think it's ultimately, like I said it again, it's like, is it really that different from the cross section of like everyday people we get? Really?
Absolutely not. I mean, there are some egos with, those particular type of celebrities. But I would imagine it would be hard to be their friend. It would be hard to, you know, provide any service for a person like that. So
This is we're almost done with the clickbait thing and satisfy my, hey, I'm talking to one of the members of Tools Trainer and all good. Like that was the entry point, but there's so much more depth to you. But I was thinking about this recently and not to make light of Justin Timberlake and his recent arrest and all this sort of stuff. And he obviously works with Ben Bruno, who's a very high profile and credible and reputable trainer. But I also look at I've always thought this about celebrities. You look at Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, and sure, there definitely are some like things that we now seem to know or understand about them and their behavior that's actually kind of grotesque. But if you look at how singularly famous Elvis would have been for his time, he's the most famous person in the world. Probably couldn't have gone anywhere outside of the farthest reaches of like the Amazon rainforest or
yeah.
African, deserts, and not find someone who would recognize him. And then all of a sudden, it's like when the Beatles get off the plane in their early part of their career, or just imagine how lonely and isolated Michael Jackson must have been. I mean, he never really even had a childhood growing up with a family that's largely exploiting him. And you have nothing but paparazzi, media frenzy. You'll never again meet someone who like is interested in you for you. They see your money, your fame, your status.
Mhm.
And I look at someone like a Justin Timberlake, and he's probably in a similar boat in terms of just like how isolating that level of celebrity has to be. So it's just
Absolutely.
a little piece of empathy I have for people. We think that their lives are like the greatest thing ever. Uh,
Mhm.
I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't actually, not for
No,
that level.
it's a hard life. I mean, I've been here. I've been in Los Angeles almost 20 years now, and I've befriended a lot of famous people and have worked with a lot of famous people, and it's a hard life. It's a you have no privacy. This is another reason why I don't really like to talk about
Hmm.
working with them and everything. They're just normal people. They want to be left alone, and working with somebody with their bodies is a very vulnerable place to be. And I don't want to exploit that.
And I like that. And so again, like I did the whole clickbait thing. We did the celebrity thing. Now let's actually go over to all the other stuff. Uh, it's not just that you work with celebrity clients, but you actually work with affluent clients. You work with people with high net worth. Now, there's almost sort of this like thing sometimes with people in the industry about how, oh, we have to be accessible to everybody. I think there's lots of ways we can create free resources. You have an app, which I definitely want to ask about, that
Mhm.
can reach more people. But at a certain point, I think sometimes trainers like almost like try to act overly noble. And the reality is we have to earn a livelihood. We have the right to be paid well for what we do. And sometimes one of the best ways to do that is to work with people who have the means to consistently work with us in the long run. So any thoughts to, how your career longevity has been shaped by being able to navigate and work with and attract higher net worth clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say half of my clients I've worked, half of my clients that I work with, I've worked with for over 10 years now. So
Wow.
I've, been very lucky, some even around 15 years. Um, I think just, I really care about my clients. I listen to, what they say. You know, um, I know, I really try to get to know them as a human, and I'm available to them all day for any questions they
Yeah.
have about their nutrition, about longevity, any health issues that they're dealing with. I go the extra mile to let them know that I care and that they're special. And I don't work with anyone that's I'm not looking forward to seeing, several days a week. That's huge.
That we forget this. We have to punch hours. We have to work long hours. And if you are going in dreading
Yeah, I won't do it.
what,
I have
like,
that luxury though, it's hard in the beginning. You might have to work with some people that maybe, you don't emotionally, spiritually, connect with, because, like, as I said before, it's a very intimate exchange that you have with a health coach and a trainer. Like, someone is trusting you with their health, with their body. And I mean, I see my clients more than I see my family, and vice versa. They become my family, and I know all of their secrets. That every male and female client has cried on my shoulder at some point, and vice versa. It's a very special bond.
and I hope more trainers take this to heart because recently one of a client of mine had an interview at a gym and she'd explained how the person interviewing her had like immediately sat down and said something negative about the outgoing client. And of
Oh,
course, she was taken aback and she knew immediately, all right, this is not somewhere where I would ever want to work. But that stuff happens, right?
mhm.
And it's one thing to describe a nebulous situation that's hypothetical, but it's an entirely other thing to actually like, hey, I that see the person walking out the door and saying something negative. Um, I think that even though we don't technically have like the same kind of like what is it guideline or like something that say a mental health professional, therapist, a psychiatrist would have, or a doctor, whatever. Uh, what is it? Doctor client privilege, lawyer client privilege,
Mhm.
right? We should treat it that way. We should
Yeah,
absolutely should be sacred vault.
absolutely. I agree. Yeah, and there's so many other things you need to take into consideration to form this type of bond. It's, you don't go in with an iPad, which I see a lot of trainers do, and just have this cookie cutter routine for each client. Like, every day I go in to see a client, I ask them how their body's feeling. I assess their energy levels, their emotional state, and then I come up with a plan for the day. Like, and where you stand, like, if it's a woman that's a little self-conscious about her body, you're not gonna like look right between their crotch when they're doing a sit-up. Like, it's like everywhere like you have to take into consideration the client's comfort at all times. Like,
And not just I get the impression you probably train them in private settings,
mhm,
but if you're in a public gym, it's not just where you are, but it's also how they're situated relative to everybody else in that gym. Because
exactly.
I split my time. I have a home studio and I contract at a gym where there's a lot of people there.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, all of these things are important, and you're not gonna do a hit workout with, 100%, intensity on a day where, they just, the client just lost their parent or something. Like it's, you have to really assess and take every aspect into consideration when you work with a client.
And what I'm hearing from you is you have such a breadth of knowledge, both about the skills, the trades, the tools, but also about the person in front of you, and that you're able to very quickly assemble, go off plan. Because despite the fact that you're saying, you're talking to them, because I think any good trainer asks a client how they're feeling, gets in touch with everything, and we've all had to pivot, right?
Mhm.
We go in with a plan, but the plan might be in our mind, it might be a framework, a template, but then you can change out pieces and adjust on the fly. You're not advocating that someone just makes something up on the spot. You're
No,
working from a
absolutely not.
framework.
Absolutely not. I take into consideration what we've done earlier in the week, and if my clients, glutes are super sore, I'm not gonna do a glute focused workout. Just common sense uh programming. But there are other variables that I like to take into consideration with each session. And if they're not feeling well, etc. Like there's been times where I've had clients that were really depressed. And I'm like, why don't we just go take a walk out in the sunshine today? And then they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. And just listen to them talk.
Absolutely. Like sometimes you go, I used to work at a big commercial gym, and sometimes you got to go in the office and they cry for real.
Mhm.
That's a real thing. Everybody listening is like, had that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you also talk a lot about you want to work with clients who are interested in learning, right?
Yeah.
So you don't just approach this as, hey, I'm kicking your butt, that's it, end of story. It's like it's an ongoing educational learning relationship both ways.
Absolutely. My ideal client is someone that isn't just after changing their physique, but is truly interested in learning how to optimize every aspect of their life, like to be healthier. And having a nicer physique is a excellent byproduct of being in good health. So there's so much misinformation out there on what's the right diet, what supplements should I be taking? And I really try to educate my clients on how to make the most informed decision for their body, because we're all so different. There's not one specific diet that works for everybody. And I go as far as to work with functional medicine doctors to get labs done for all of my clients, food sensitivity tests, hormones, everything. And then I go from there and help them develop a routine, a nutritional program and a supplement program. And it just, it's better than just guessing, test, don't guess is one of my philosophies.
We're seeing this more and more in the industry now. An event I spoke at recently, there was a functional medicine doctor named Rachel Shear, and she was one of the speakers. And I know she's connected up with the industry a lot. And then my friend Joel Jameson, we did an episode a while back. Now I know Joel sort of like focused his attention elsewhere again, but he'd partnered up with someone in that space, and he was doing some high level testing to develop, I think, an individualized product, like a lot of supplements, minerals, vitamins, like that person's individual deficiencies. And we're talking about tests. Like Joel is a helicopter pilot and spends half his year in Hawaii. So Joel tests higher for like jet fuel and mercury from eating a lot of tuna, right? So it gets into this kind of depth. And what do you think about the accessibility of this stuff between, obviously we talk about working with, high net worth clients, to where the stuff's going to go for the general population, and even like the confusion surrounding it, because obviously nutrition, supplements and stuff, it becomes a battleground with
Yeah,
social.
I know. And there's so many different camps, like the vegans are fighting the carnivore diet people, vice versa. I like to come at nutrition with a little bit of sanity, and invite my clients to really listen to their bodies and test if they can. And the exciting thing about these functional medicine tests now, the price has gone down exponentially. You can order a lot of these tests to your house now, and you have to do it maybe once, twice if you can a year, and it gives you invaluable information. So I'm excited. I mean, just a couple of years ago, it was probably 3 times the price of what you can get an at home, basic blood panel now. It's great.
And like, there are probably people listening who maybe go so far over into the, well, this PubMed study or it's bullshit camp. And we're not talking about, like you said, the word hormones. And we are seeing some people talk about hormones a little bit more, like hormone balancing, stuff like that. And I always try to like look at the source. All right, is this someone who is actually really evidence-based, knows what they're talking about, who follows, what I think is evidence-based practice, or are we talking about people who are like grifting on the subject? I won't say his name, but there's this Muppet that's getting a lot of attention in the industry now for a variety of negative reasons. And he's definitely grifting on women's menopausal health. And a lot of times he's saying to women that like it's all in their heads, it's not even real, right? Like, holy shit, right?
I'm almost 40, so I can tell you.
And like funny enough, like some women are like diving into this, but the whole industry's like up in arms about this guy. And then the other side, you've got people who they're talking about hormonal health, but what are they actually telling people? Lose the excess body fat, right? And whatever the ideological wild ones will tell you, there's a relationship. Getting crazy lean is not ideal for everybody, but like carrying around enormous amounts of excess body fat is not metabolically healthy, and
No.
we're no
And that
longer
that
pretending.
increase your estrogen levels, insulin sensitivity is a
Yeah.
huge, that is a huge driver of estrogen dominance. And that's a big issue why, a lot of women start to get belly fat and everything, in their perimenopausal cycle of life. And yeah, that's another reason why I like to have my women test as well, and my men, especially like I'm seeing testosterone levels plummet
Mm.
because of our environment these days. It's, so most men, when they get tested, they're not feeling well, they have no libido, they're getting, visceral fat. I'm like, test your testosterone. And the shitty thing is, if you get your labs done by your allopathic doctor, it's in normal range. Well, what's normal? Like normal range for a 40-year-old man in the United States is not what you want to be.
Well,
Not up.
and think about what normal is. Normal is metabolically unhealthy. Normal is
Exactly.
now obese, right? So the definition of normal is moving. Like it is actually moving. You would probably really love my friend Allie Gilbert. She does a lot. She calls herself the queen of men's health, and she's brilliant when it comes to a lot of this blood paneling and testosterone stuff.
Mhm.
So like, let's go more in the hormone stuff. We hear people talking. Cortisol is a big buzzword thing now, and it's tricky for people to navigate. I mean, I think we could oversimplify insulin and cortisol almost here in saying that I know Lane Norton was talking about this recently on Chris Williamson's podcast, but if you have someone who's caught up in like immediate like spikes of things like cortisol and insulin, they fundamentally misunderstand those hormones.
Mhm.
It's chronically elevated levels, but it's not like these things are necessarily as causal as much as they're a byproduct of the fact that people are overweight, they're eating too many calories, they're too sedentary, they're not moving around enough, and these things all work together and it becomes a vicious cycle. So how do you
Yeah.
get people back from that space? What do you focus on?
Well, so, cortisol is demonized. We need cortisol, but we need it at the right time of day. We want a spike in the morning. That's what wakes us up, right? And we don't want a spike in the evening. And it's not just, everyone, when they think of cortisol, they think of stress and, emotional stress. It's not just emotional stress. It could be stress, like you're eating something that your body disagrees with, that can raise your cortisol. You're over exercising, that can raise your cortisol. Some people even have too low cortisol and they have no motivation because of it. So it's far more nuanced than people understand. And yeah, glycemic variability. I mean, glycemic variability is sensitivity is it's like the most important thing. Like if you're insulin sensitive, I mean that's why everyone's obese. They're just their insulin's going all day long. It's there's no their body's not metabolically flexible. So that's one of the key things that I work with my clients is finding metabolically becoming more metabolically flexible.
This is something I'm hearing more and more about. Actually, my friend Mike T. Nelson actually has a certification in this stuff.
Mhm.
And my old podcast co-host, Dean Guido, really, really big on metabolic flexibility, being able to, and we're talking about metabolize carbohydrates and fat, right?
Yes, and have your body readily be like be readily available to use fat as energy. It's a clean, it has less byproducts. It's a cleaner source of energy. So, I think the whole low fat diet in the 80s and 90s really screwed us up.
Hmm.
That's when the biggest uptick of obesity is after that time. So I'm all about eating healthy fats and taking bad fats out of your diet. And if you don't know where you're at, I know it's still a little pricey to get a continuous glucose monitor, but that is another way to test and really understand where your body's at.
Hmm.
Huge fan of it.
And there's so much, I think, still confusion about these sort of things. So I'm just excited to see as more research meets practice, meets personal experience comes to light, and we get more of a bit, I think, a bit more of a mainstream understanding of what's going to help people. So,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, it's, if you test and do something like get a continuous glucose monitor, or there's even a product called the Lumen where you
mm,
breathe into it and it measures what your body, like what percentage of fat to carbohydrates you're burning at that very moment. Like the more like we can understand how our body functions, it's like biofeedback, right? Then you can easily shift and alter your behavior to improve your metabolism. So that's something I'm a huge proponent of, huge fan of.
good. And obviously, I mean, I'll pivot for a second. Anybody wants to go and like look at the physique you're walking around with? I mean, you are actually quite ripped. I mean, I posted something a couple of days ago and you commented on it. It's how like we get all these idiots. It's like my buddy Goob and how Goob calls out the people who Photoshop. And
Mhm.
so it's like, yeah, the dumb fuckery of people who like Photoshop themselves smaller, more ripped, or what have you. You are leaner than people are able to Photoshop themselves. But yet you see the degree of athleticism, like you're not struggling with energy. And quite frankly, a lot of people might look at your physique and they might go, "Oh, I want that," but they actually may not be able to get down that level of leanness. I mean, I'm sure there's a lifestyle component. There's probably a genetic component. Even like just the appearance of abs is actually
I don't
very
know about
genetic.
that.
What's that?
My whole family's morbidly obese. I don't think it's genetic. I'm a nut with my protocol. It took me a long time. It took me about 8 years to really dial in my diet and experiment with fasting, with carbs versus fats and everything. And it was around COVID 2020 when I really dialed it in and my body just completely shifted. I always had a little bit of pudge, and it's now I can just maintain my level of leanness, all year long.
And I think there's a misconception that women shouldn't be as lean as you. Now, I want to tread very carefully here because I suspect that most women probably would a lot of time I think it's the way that they would go about it. And I think this is true of like men. Like men get down past a certain level of body fat and it can actually very adversely affect testosterone. They can really
Yeah.
tank, right? So we want to be careful. But I know people. I've got an old client who's walking around shredded all of the time, normally eats whatever. And that's why I say the genetic component and the genetics plays a role. We know that. It's
Oh,
just also
absolutely.
environment also, right? And my guess is you just live at a very different environment behavior than what your family does, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's a magnifier of the genetic side of stuff. But
Mhm.
it's not to say that women cannot get that lean and actually have good hormonal health. It may be just a difficult goal for most people. So
It
I
is.
don't like that people just look at someone who's a woman who's got shredded abs and assume negative things. Like that's not fair either.
No, I get those comments especially on YouTube a lot.
Mm,
Like, she must not have her menstrual cycle anymore. I'm like, actually, I'm, very, my health is number one. It's not, I don't really care about my aesthetics as much as I care about my health. And I test every like 3 months. I test my hormones and cortisol levels and everything to make sure that, I'm taking care of myself. And, I think it varies upon, in each individual, the females, like how being super lean can affect your thyroid and hormones and everything. For me, I can stay pretty late and not have any negative impacts.
And there's a really important thing here. It's people misunderstand. They think that like women getting ultra lean is the cause of menstrual cycle irregularity. It's not that. It's stress. So if a woman, if our bodies are under a lot of stress, and for most people to get down that level of leanness, they have to restrict food a fair bit to
I
get
eat
from
a
where they
lot.
were. Right. They're probably like super active, I can tell.
Yeah.
And so if your body does not interpret your level of leanness and the efforts to get there as being a highly stressful state, it's probably not going to have any adverse effect on hormones, right?
Oh, and I spend a lot of time on recovery too, which is a really key point to this too. I sleep 8 to 9 hours a night. I do cold plunges, I do saunas, I meditate, I do, photobiomodulation. I spend just as much time on recovery as I do training.
And I love the fact that you said sleep first, because again, this is one of these things now
Biggest.
we have, people fighting over stuff. And do I think that Huberman's like vastly overselling cold plunges? Yes, I do.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
but you can overdo that.
But it's like, I can't remember what they're saying, but like spending an hour in a cold plunge a day. It's like, I don't want to do that. Like,
That'll kill your adrenals.
yeah, I'm not down with that at all, right? I mean, but I also respect the fact that if someone feels good, and you mentioned meditation, so
Mhm,
what are these things probably for you? My guess is they probably feel good. They're probably really good for your stress, your experience of stress, therefore your hormonal response to stress. You're certainly not eating in a way that is putting on a lot of body fat. You're
mhm,
physically very active, that's obvious. And these are the major rocks. And then you're adding in these other pieces that make you feel good.
mhm,
Like some people probably feel really good. You have a nice like analgesic response to cold plunging. Like, it reduces pain, discomfort, acute inflammation.
mhm.
Cool, awesome. Saunas. I don't know the research well on saunas, but I understand that there is some good data that suggests that saunas could be good for health and longevity. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for hormones too, for detoxification, because having heavy metals and other VOCs and microplastics in your body and everything is another acute stressor, right? So having a really good detoxification protocol is another way to alleviate stress on your body. So I do like ozone therapy. I do a lot of things. Since I live in LA, it's very polluted. I drink like the highest quality water. So it's like water, sleep, water, light, food, movement.
Hmm.
These things are free.
So
To nail those, you're going to be in a good place.
because I'm sure, the audience I have, I know some of them are going to be hearing some of this stuff. Some of this stuff is going to be, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's going to seem woo to them. I know that. I just know that.
Yeah.
And you deal with that, right? But the point here is, and you've said it yourself, is just seeing how someone individually experiences these things. And I'm not talking about going out and doing, I mean, we get some grifters who are talking about some really batshit crazy stuff as if it's a panacea for everybody. And you even said
Like drinking piss. That's a trend right now.
like where the fuck did that idea come from, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So if anything, I remember I used to exist in these like hardcore skeptics Facebook groups. Used to like, and they're always making fun of, and rightfully so, like the food babe, Vani Hari, right? She's popped up again. She was the original person who would walk through grocery store aisles and like demonize stuff. She's the one who picked out some chemical. I can't remember, like I can't say it. I can't remember. It is years ago. That was like the yoga mat chemical in
Oh
Subway.
yeah, no, speaking of.
And and this is a common tactic where you take some scary sounding chemical and okay, because it's found in this thing that you wouldn't eat, therefore this is really bad. I saw something recently and someone equated, I think it was Reese peanut butter cups, which I'd get very defensive about, and gasoline. It's like, no, like eating Reese peanut butter cups is not the equivalent of drinking
No,
gasoline, right? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. So,
grossly exaggerated.
to say the least.
Yeah.
But so I used to exist in those spaces, and it was like everything's hardcore. And then I kind of moved off of that because I look at the industry, and and I think there are really smart people who understand research science, and some of my favorites. But I find that my favorites, like your Dr. Mike Israetel's, your Dr. Lane Norton's, like they're sort of hardcore about it, but they also get the nuance.
Mhm.
They get the nuance of it, and they're open-minded to changing ideas and opinions as we learn more about these things. So, and there are people who, and I won't say names, but people we don't necessarily always equate with being the hardcores don't think are necessarily evidence-based as practitioners. I'm not talking about the grifters and the charlatans. I'm talking about the middle ground. But
Mhm.
my smart friends understand to learn from them the relationships, success on YouTube, other things that platform them so that way they're, scaling more broadly. And I find that there are people who just like are so stuck in this. Nope, if the study doesn't explicitly say this, blah blah blah, then it's no good. And studies, I mean, I'm going to be careful here because people are think I'm suddenly flipped on the scientific, but studies, the results of a study exist on a bell curve. And that means that a lot of the results are around the mean, but there are outliers on either side. And the thing I would just take from that is there are going to be people who respond differently to stuff. On the average, like, we're going to have a pretty good idea whether it's not something works across a population. But we may find someone really does well with something that population doesn't seem to respond to. Or we may have something where something that seems to be evidence-based doesn't work well at all, or is actually adverse for an individual. So
Yeah.
it sounds to me like you, and this is where I want to go with this, is you approach your training as a concierge service. So do you want to talk a little bit more about like the idea of a concierge service to your clientele?
Yeah, I mean, people come to me because they want to be healthier, they want to be fitter. And if you're going to the gym 3 days a week to see me, but eating McDonald's and sleeping 3 hours a night and are in a horrible, dreadful relationship, etc., like you're not going to get the results that you want. So I think it's really important to look at health and fitness in a holistic way and give people a good guideline on how to sleep better, how to eat better, how to figure out navigate their health issues, and become really educated, become their own teacher, become really in tune with how their body functions. Because people come in, they have zero body awareness. They have no interoception. If I say lift your right arm, they'll lift their left leg. They're that out of the body. So once people begin to, you know, um, learn that sense of what it feels like to feel good, like, no cheat days for the first month or two. See how your body feels if you eat an appropriate diet, and that should be your baseline. Because if somebody's been eating like shit for the last 10 years, that's their baseline. They don't know what it's like to feel good. They don't know what it's like to feel like how they would feel if they slept 8 hours a night. I want to create a new baseline, and that motivates people, and they'll see results.
What I love this because you're right. People don't even realize that the low grade discomfort they're in isn't supposed to be normal. That's their normal.
They're normal. Yeah, that's one thing I hear time and time again with new clients. Is when they finally realize that they've been feeling like shit for the last decade, they won't go back. They won't go back to that ever again. So it teaches them.
I've got a friend who was born with, I think, one kidney and maybe 20% functioning of his other one. And in his late 20s, he had a kidney transplant. And I remember him telling me, like, how he felt afterwards. I mean, that's not the most straightforward thing. There's anti-rejection drugs you're taking for the rest of your life. Like, there's stuff people don't understand. But he said, just he had no contrast. So he didn't know what good actually felt like. So he was just used to the way he felt. And he said it was just like completely changed for him. But he had no understanding of comparing it to what is your and mine and most of everybody listening's everyday experience in that particular context.
Mhm.
So it gave him a new lease on life. And it's I think a kind of an analogy for this stuff. And like you said, the poor sleep. I love the fact that, like, despite some of the more progressive things we're talking about here, and like, listen, you exist in LA culture. Guess what? You're gonna get exposed to that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you keep saying sleep, you keep saying hydration, you keep talking about, just eating well. Like, and those are the themes that keep coming up, right? You're just layering
Basic.
this extra stuff.
you do the basics, the clients will become excited because they feel so much better and they're seeing a change in their body. And then, if they're interested, which most of them are, like interested in learning more approaches, like more fancy stuff, because in LA, we're the epicenter of longevity here. That we have access to a lot of cool therapies and like photobiomodulation, cold plunges everywhere, peptide therapy, like you name it.
Mm.
Um, it's then if they want to do more, I'll educate them on these things too, which I'm always super, fascinated and nerding out about these new things coming in the field of longevity.
It's certainly one of the like things that is exploding in what people are talking about. I guess we got Peter Attia now, I think is probably one of the more prominent people in the industry. My friend Joel Jameson just appeared on Peter Attia's talking about heart rate variability.
Oh, cool.
So, good episode. I mean, it gets a little geeky, but
Mhm.
it's good stuff. Joel is certainly getting really interested now in the longevity side stuff, but he's a guy who came out of, it's still in the strength and conditioning world and worked with a lot of very prominent UFC fighters. Like he's worked with world champion UFC guys, but now he's really going hard into the longevity space and the research on that. I guess you probably get into Peter Diamandis' stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, I like his work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would. What would you recommend as like entry level stuff for anybody who wants to learn more about this stuff? Where would you send them?
I mean, there's so many great podcasts, I feel like nowadays people's attention span is just dwindling more and more. So not many people read books anymore. I'm an avid reader, but look at some podcasts like I like Andrew Huberman's podcast. Your podcast is very informative. Peter Tia, God, there's so many more. My Found My Fitness is a great one for women too. Like there's a lot of focus on hormonal health.
Rhonda Patrick.
So much information out there, but you got to take it with a grain of salt. There are different camps, and you could find information, studies backing any opinion. So I think it's really important to sit at every seat of the table and really make a educated um, you know, guess on what is real, who's funding the studies, everything. Still
I think
open-minded.
I'm a big fan of expose yourself to different stuff so you develop a good filter for what passes muster. And like
Cool.
you mentioned both Huberman and Rhonda Patrick, and I've been politely critical of both in this particular thing. It's they both tend to wander way outside of their area of education expertise sometimes. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean we throw out the baby with the bathwater. They're both very, very smart people. They know their area of expertise very, very well, and they bring on really smart people. I, for me, Hubert's a little tricky because I think he keeps getting caught saying stuff that isn't well supported by research. But then those are also the highlights that the hardcore evidence-based community just grab onto. And those might still be a very small minority of things. And I think there is something to be said for people who are willing to be like I had a Mike Isertel on a podcast a while ago, and he talked about a spectrum of like liberal versus conservative, not politically, but in terms of like how comfortable people are about speculating on what's out there with the research or what is promising. And there are some people who are simply more willing to explore ideas that are more speculative. And then there are people who like will not make any sort of statement unless it seems to be very firmly grounded. And I think it's okay to be explore that spectrum as long as you don't fall off the deep end.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Don't take everything verbatim and suddenly you're gonna just change everything because Huberman said you should do this. I think just listen to it, just get excited about the interesting, new things that are on the forefront for health and longevity. And it's not so much the podcasters that I'm, a big fan of. I love to hear these experts in these different fields come onto these shows and talk about what's on the horizon. I think it's really exciting,
Yeah,
you know.
and Huberman's had a lot of great people on, like Andy Galpin, and Andy and
Oh,
I've
I
never
love the
met
show.
Andy, so we'll be speaking at the same event in
Awesome.
Seattle in October. So my friend Luke Hoser is vet, so I got to shout a couple things real quick, and then I got one more question for you. Um, I'll be talking about this a fair bit, but I'm speaking at Luca's Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit. I went there in 2017. I knew almost no one. 7 years later, I'm in the lineup, which is nuts. and Andy Galpin's part of that lineup. It's a really crazy. Joel Jameson is part of it. Again, my buddy Luke is running it. He'll be speaking. Crazy lineup. I'm also doing my conference September 13th and 14th in Edmonton. Luke is one of my speakers. I've got Natalia Mello, Jennifer Van Barneveld, who's the owner of Strong Magazine. I've got Lee Boyce, Jonathan Goodman, Dr. Sam Spinelli. Got a crazy lineup. So if anybody listening wants more details on this, just message me. Good. So I got only a couple more minutes, but I wanted to ask you your quick thoughts on, you have an app.
Yes.
And I had Sherelle Grant on last episode, and we talked about her app development and whether or not she'd recommend that to people. And she said there's some capital investment in that.
Oh, yeah.
So just a really quick thought on, all right, is this something trainers really should go after, or what are the cautionary thoughts there?
I mean, this was a passion project for me because, I'm one person and, I'm not cheap to work with in person, and I want to be able to, the reason that I am in this industry is because I really do care, and I feel like, the healthcare system is really, um, ha- done a disservice in the last few decades. And, there is so much misinformation. I really want to have a bigger outreach to help more people. And, it's affordable. It's $35 a month. And it's, functional workouts for beginners through advanced workouts. Really teaching people how to move with expert detailed descriptions on how to do everything. My nutrition outline that works best for most people, recipe books, and a lot of this information that we're talking about now, like how to optimize your hormones, glycemic variability, etc. So it's a really good place for someone to start. Uh, but as far as the building of it, oof, that almost killed me.
That
So much,
seems, sorry, say again.
it's so much work. I mean, it's 2 years of me shooting thousands of exercise videos on top of my busy 12-hour days here in LA with my clients. Um, and just, huge upfront expense. And the market's very saturated. So would I recommend it? If you got, you have some big backers, it's not cheap, it's a lot of work.
And Sherelle seemed to have shared a similar message. So if you guys want to hear more about that, we talk a little more, go back to the last episode. Victoria, this was a treat. It was wonderful to have you here. It's nice to finally get face to face. So we've been chatting over social media a bit. And actually, I guess one more thing is I will be in the LA area now. I'm not sure how, if anybody's in the LA area, I'm not sure if I'll be able to connect with people, but I'm going to be doing, as a plan right now, my friend Chris Hitchco's show up, I guess a fitness mentorship, and he's got a facility there. So I'll be at their Santa Monica location, and I believe we'll be doing that late morning, early afternoon on July 11th. That's a Thursday, because I'm down for a podcast recording, which I'm going to keep hush hush until it's officially released on I think it's the 10th. But yeah, I'll be spending a few days in LA. So if everything works out, you and I actually get to meet up in person. I love this about social media and the internet. I love that aspect of it. Got a bunch of friends in LA, and I've never been, so I'm going to try to connect with a bunch of them. So everybody listening, go check out what Victoria's doing. You're going to see a lot of really cool workouts. You're going to see, someone who's very passionate about this stuff. And every once in a while, you might get a snippet of some of the celebrity stuff. Not too much there. And I'm glad that we touched on that, because I think it's cool. I actually think it's really fucking cool. But at the same time, there's so much more depth to your career and your knowledge base. So there's a lot more than just the celebrity trainer side of it. But I guess there's some brand capital and also working with celebrities as well, right?
Well, thank you so much, DT. You had some excellent questions, and I had a really good time talking to you today.
I appreciate it. So for everybody listening, share this with someone in your world that you think would really enjoy this. And, for all the trainers who are watching this stuff, people who are interested in growing brand media, I'm trying to share with you people who've had success in a bunch of different domains, success in social media, success in their careers. And even if someone might be like, oh, I'm that hardcore evidence-based skeptic, whatever, and trust me, I live half in that world. I really like looking at these things through an open mind, because we're learning more and more all the time. And I would really rather be on the cutting edge and have relationships with people who are really savvy about the cutting edge of what works, than to be firmly rooted in, not having an open mind on this stuff. So Victoria, thank you so much. Everybody listening, thank you. And I'm going to do my best to bring you episodes in the coming weeks. I've got some travel and events coming up, but stay tuned.